It's all but over now in Chicago as the Blackhawks have just scored an empty net 4-1. They lead the Wild, 1:23 remaining in the third period there. Meanwhile, in the NBA, 89-65, Spurs continue to lead the Mavericks in Game 7 there, 1:43 remaining in the third quarter. We're going to talk some Habs Bruins right now here on Game Points with Matthew Ross on TSN 690 with our next guest. He is a long-time Bruins reporter. You know him well here on TSN 690 as well. You can check out his coverage of this series with the Boston Herald as well as TSN.ca, and he's also appearing as an analyst on Sports Extra on CTV Montreal. Make sure to follow him as well on twitter.com/Murphy'sLaw74. It is Jimmy Murphy. Hey, Jim, how you doing?
I'm great, Matt. How you been?
I am well, thanks. So you're in Montreal. You're ready for Bruins versus Habs in Game 3. We really just don't know what to expect, do we?
We really don't. You look at these first two games, I think the Bruins completely outplay them in Game 1. They lose. I think the Habs, for the better part of the game yesterday, outplay them in Game 2, and they lose. So, it can go either way, and I think the one key that I think both teams need to take into Game 3 is just don't let up and don't let frustration set in. If you're the Bruins and you're pouring on the shots as they did in Game 1, just keep it going and don't take your foot off the pedal. I mean, PK Subban has said it numerous times before and during this series that the Bruins are probably the most resilient team he's ever dealt with, but he also believes his team as well is become a resilient team. So I like the Bruins in 7. I still think this is going 7, but more and more, I really have no clue who's going to come out on victorious.
Now, obviously, one of the storylines, the lineup changes that the Bruins made, one forward in, one forward out, one D in, one D out for Game 2. Do you think it made a difference?
I think it did somewhat. I don't think that was the collective difference. Like I said, I didn't really think they played that well. I thought Tuukka Rask kept them in it, and, truth be told, when they went up 3-1, you got that feeling when they were down 4-1 to the Maple Leafs. It was just flat. It was quiet. They couldn't seem to get anything going, and Carey Price really, really seemed to be in their head. But I think what made the difference yesterday is Sean Thornton. And he didn't really do much in terms of getting on the scoreboard or creating a scoring play. But when he came back from that injury, he's one of their emotional leaders. They seem to get a jump in their game. And I know, watching the NBC broadcast, Pierre Maguire mentioned right when he came back how he was on that bench saying, look, guys, one goal every 5 minutes, and we'll be right in this. And he just got them going, and they got 3 goals in 5:32.
Elsewhere in that series, the Canadiens made one change from Game 1 to Game 2. They put in Bourneval on the fourth line to give Briere someone that can finish a little bit of speed as well, and removed Travis Moen. I've always been of the mindset that the Canadiens game obviously is speed, not necessarily physical play. A lot of people are saying, you got to beef up to play the Bruins. You got to put in some of the bigger guys on defense. You got to put in Moen. But I liked that move. I liked that Michel Therrien added more skill, or it's a younger rookie kind of player who played well in that Lightning series. And I wanted to see the Canadiens try and get faster and emphasize their speed. It didn't work out, obviously, in the final score, but your thoughts on a minor move, but a move nonetheless.
I love having him in there, Bourneval. I think he's added a lot of energy to this team, and you know what? He's fast and he's a little more skilled than most third or fourth liners, but he's also can bring that energy you need from those lines, and he can play some physical game as well. So I think that was a good move. I mean, I'm not going to question much of what Michel Therrien does. I've never been a fan of him, but the proof is in the pudding with the way he's handled this team the last 2 seasons, especially this season. And you know what? He's become one of the better coaches. I think he's one of the best coaches left in the playoffs right now.
Jimmy, in Montreal, people are questioning Max Pacioretty in the number 1 line, how inept they've been so far in the series. Who on the Boston Bruins do you think has to step up their game as we approach the Montreal games this week in the Bell Center?
Well, I think, Carl Soderberg had kind of been an X factor for them down the stretch run and in the first round, and I'd like to see him maybe pick it up a little more for the Bruins, but it comes down to their big guns as well, and I think Milan Lucic is playing a great series right now. He had a couple empty nets he missed. He had some chances he'd like to bury and get back there, but at the same time, I think he's been a presence there. But I think the guy between Lucic and Iginla is a guy hasn't really had the series he wants, and that's David Krejci. I mean, usually by this time in the playoffs, if the Bruins are in the middle of a playoff run, he's atop the league leaders in points, and he's not there right now. So I don't think he's where he needs to be, and I think he's going to have to really become the David Krejci we've seen in the last two Bruins Cup runs.
Jarome Iginla has played pretty decently in this series. Your thoughts on what he's brought to them in this playoff?
I think he's been great. I mean, I think he's not backing down from anything, and he never does. And he's creating some chances as well. I think some frustration set in there, just with the way Price has been able to stop him. I like the battle going on between him and Brendan Gallagher, and I'll tell you, Brendan Gallagher, we all knew he had guts, but he's got some big ones there. Telling Jarome Iginla yesterday at mid-ice, "I own you." If you watch the replays there, he was saying that to Iginla, and I'm sure Iginla's not going to forget that and pick his spot, so that'll be an interesting battle to watch for the rest of the series. But I think Iginla's been pretty good.
Now, do you see any similarities perhaps with a guy like Gallagher with Marchand?
I do, and that's the common analogy there and the common comparison. I see it for sure. I mean, when both their guys are on the element and really walking the line the correct way, they're so effective, and they can be, two of the biggest aggravators in the NHL. The only thing I see with Gallagher is I think he's a much cleaner player. I think there's less of the antics that you get from Marchand. The whole scene in Vancouver where he's looking at his finger like a fake ring there and a fake hoist at a cup, and just real stupid stuff like that you don't need and that gives the other team bulletin board material. I think that's what makes Gallagher better in that respect. But you know what? I think Brad Marchand can be very effective. And, when you said, who's another guy we need to step up for the Bruins, I totally forgot about him. I mean, he hasn't done much in the playoffs yet in terms of scoring, so they're going to need him to put his offense up.
All right, we're seeing how good Dougie Hamilton is in this postseason matchup against the Canadiens, and obviously the Habs play the Bruins during the regular season, so we know who he is. We know he's a young guy. We know he's going to be a typical Bruin player for a very, very long time. But talk to me about how good he is, because you see him regularly.
Well, actually, I mean, I haven't seen him too regularly this season because I've been in Montreal, but I sort of saw him grow up last year in his rookie season and, get a great experience, obviously, going all the way to Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals and getting in some valuable experience on the ice as well in that Rangers series when the Bruins were banged up on D. I think that helped him a lot. And when I talk to a lot of my former friends that cover the team back in Boston or just people around the team, players, management, or just scouts in the league that watch him a lot, I think they all agree he has matured tremendously, and he's become better in his two-way game. I mean, this was a kid that always thought offense first, and that's not Claude Julien's game. I mean, things start from the back end out, and he wants defense first, and they kind of butted heads at times last year, but Hamilton really took it in stride and decided, you know what, I'm going to absorb everything that Julien's teaching me here and try to play it his way, and it's paid off this season.
Jim, just to further elaborate on the defensive core here for Boston, how much did they miss Dennis Seidenberg in the back end? We asked Eric Wilbur this question. He thought it's been a big difference here. Has this been something that you've seen so far with Seidenberg out for the season?
I mean, I don't think it's been much of a difference until they got to the playoffs, but I think the deeper you go in the playoffs, and we're talking probably late this round and then into the conference finals should they make it, and to the finals if they make it there, that's when you're going to miss Dennis Seidenberg because of the minutes he eats up and the rest he can give Zdeno Chara, because we saw Chara show his human side last year when he got worn down, and he was just pretty much had legs of jello against the Chicago Blackhawks. So that's where they kind of missed Dennis Seidenberg. But I think overall that defense has done a great job filling in for him. And I'll tell you what, I had a good conversation with Seidenberg yesterday, and he's not ruling out returning in this series at all. So he's going to do his best to get back. If this series gets into Game 6 or Game 7, or the Bruins advance past it, there's still a very good chance he could play. So that's good news for the Bruins.
He is Jimmy Murphy, and of course you can follow him on Twitter.com/Murphy'sLaw74. Don't forget to check out his coverage in the Boston Herald and on Sports Extra on CTV Montreal. You're everywhere, and that's a good thing. So I'm sure you're on one of the shows here, right, this week as well?
I'll be somewhere, yeah, and I get my head on a swivel, but you know what, I love it. This is my favorite time of year, and it's a really cool feeling being sort of stuck in the middle of this rivalry, because I have so many ties here in Montreal and Boston, and it's good to see both sides of the rivalry.
Prediction for Game 3?
You know what? I'm going to go with the Bruins in this one. I like the Bruins. They tend to play better in the Bell Center than they do at home in
Yeah.
TD Garden. And I like them coming in and taking a 2-1 series lead, but I still think it goes back to Boston tied 2-2. So I like the Bruins in Game 3. I like the Canadiens in Game 4.
Habs all time at the Bell Center, 20-29 in the playoffs. So there you go. Yeah, not the friendly confines that Habs fans hoped it would be. Thanks so much, Jimmy. That's Jimmy Murphy from.
Have a good one, guys.
Thank you. From CTV Montreal Sports Extra coverage of Boston Herald and a couple of other outlets as well. It's Game Points here on TSN 690. Other side of the break, we're going to talk some NFL draft. Remember? Oh, yeah, the draft. That's coming up. Mo Khan, Stefano Micella here helping us break it down. That is next.